Like the new bullshit coming out of the Republican Party saying, literally, hey, there's no other way to do this. If you were going to get rid of millions of people, right? How are you going to get rid of millions of people and follow the Constitution? Okay, it's very simple. See, I was a big fan of Joe Biden's immigration strategies and his approach to the border and immigration. Now, he proposed at one point that $14 billion immigration strategy. Now, let me just, you see, here they are, right beneath me. At the end of the video, it'll pause for you to be able to see each one of these points. These made up his strategy. Let me try to explain each one of these to you real quick. So the first one is 25,000 more ICE detention beds. In other words, increase the number of beds so that you're not artificially creating detention facilities and potentially violating and continuing potentially to violate individuals' rights for cruel and unusual punishment by not having simple beds and simple treatment and humane treatment while in ICE detention. Two was 1,000 additional custom border patrol officers. Number three, 1,300 new border patrol agents. Next, you see, Biden had already tested this one. This was the one that I loved the most. You see, Biden had tested setting up immigration processing centers on the other side of Mexico for people in Central and South America who wanted to come here to literally not have to do the walk. And the reason why they would have to do the walk is because they would be able to go to processing centers. Now, you might want to pull out a map and look at these. So the first one is in Colombia. Colombia is directly on the border between South America and Central America. So South American migrants never had to go any further than Colombia, or perhaps could stay even in their own country and just do the small walk to Colombia instead of the walk that goes all the way up Central America. Ecuador was another immigration processing center. It was also in Guatemala, which is right next to the border of Mexico, on the foot of the border of Mexico. Costa Rica. People could process there in all these areas without coming here. These processing centers were able to process individually 20,000 applications for becoming citizens of the United States. Lawful. Now, here is the big one for you guys to get. The Biden plan, in order to process more than 500,000 applicants per year, in other words, to take people that are here illegally, process them through our lawful process, follow the Constitution, giving them their rights to counsel and all the rights afforded inside of the Constitution, was 375 new immigration judge teams and 1,600 asylum officers. In other words, the ability to process all these applicants. The projection on this number when it was done is that this would be able to lawfully process more than 500,000 people per year here in the United States, completely lawfully, in violation of not one constitutional right of those 500,000 people, and be able to remove those who shouldn't be here because you've done the actual process of determining whether or not they are here, instead of violating their constitutional rights by just throwing them out because you don't have enough judges to process the applicants. The reason why Donald Trump is violating the constitutional rights, and his team and the GOP is violating all of these people's constitutional rights, is because they failed to pass the Biden plan. Because the Biden plan would have done two major things. Number one, 375 new immigration judge teams. In other words, judges, defense attorneys, prosecutors, all that stuff. So that everyone gets their rights. And the Constitution is followed. Because that's where it takes place. right? Everyone gets due process. And 1,600 for asylum seekers, because asylum seekers are a little bit more complicated. So you get 1,600 more people there, because asylum is a little bit more complicated. And setting up processing centers on the other side of Mexico. You see, that's what Biden planned. If you had followed the Biden plan, you never would have even heard of a single individual right now having to worry about their due process rights, or having any of this bullshit about getting rid of the Constitution. We're getting rid of the Constitution for one reason, because Donald Trump stopped Joe Biden's bill from being passed. The reason why everyone's rights are being violated is because they are not doing what Biden suggested, and the bipartisan goal of passing this bill never did. And because of that, the United States is seen in the world as an insane country, because we're trying to throw out 1 million people, which, you know what, if we had 375 new judges, we would be deporting almost 800,000 people this year alone. If, of course, in these chambers were determined that they needed to leave. That's all. We're violating people's due process rights because of partisan bullshit. Thank you. You know the other little thing that Biden did in his plan? He also engaged NATO. NATO countries were stepping up and accepting Central and South American migrants, and also migrants from the Gulf of Mexico, from our island, people who would want to come here. That the opportunity was also to go to Europe. Trump will never be able to do that, because Trump likes to threaten war with NATO over Greenland instead of being friends with them. And when you're friends with them, guess what they do? They take in migrants. So not only did he create more judges to make certain that people's rights were processed, and that there were 25,000 more beds to make certain that we are not violating their rights, that our prison systems are reflecting our values by not creating cruel and unusual punishment, by trying to develop a high standard. No, Trump's not like that. Trump doesn't give a damn. Trump wants war with NATO and wants to be as cruel and much of an evil prick and violate 18242, whose punishment happens to include the death penalty. And the only way you're going to be able to stop Trump is, in all honesty, putting people in prison for 18242. Thank you.
I really hope that you find that stuff informational. And if you do, and you think that my work is something you would like to support, please like, subscribe, and share and comment on this video. We really need to have these big discussions about the issues of restoring ethics and honor to Washington, D.C. That's why I made the little book, which is really, it's not like a legendary writing. It's just my concepts of the basic laws that we need and the constitutional challenges that we need, that would create legal, constitutional, enforceable standards in Washington, D.C. for basic ethic requirements, which right now we are completely absent of. But we can get there if we work together and realize that ethics and honor are things above party. So long as we do that, we can end the swamp together, because everyone wants the swamp gone. And we can do so as Americans upholding the values of the Constitution and not a bunch of bickering children. So please, again, like, share, and subscribe and comment. Thank you.